Welcome to the Garage Gardeners Radio Show with your hosts Emma and Stephen Biggs, right here on Reality Radio 101. You're listening to the Garage Gardeners Radio Show, where we talk about pushing garden boundaries. We talk to creative gardeners and garden experts who break the rules and make new ones. Our host, Emma Biggs, is a popular speaker, and she's only 14. Emma is the author of Gardening with Emma. Stephen Biggs is the author of the Canadian bestseller, No Guff Vegetable Gardening, the award-winning Grow Figs Where You Think You Can't, and most recently, Grow Lemons Where You Think You Can't. Now, here are your hosts, the daughter and father duo, Emma Biggs and Stephen Biggs.
Hey everyone, I'm Emma Biggs, and thanks for hanging out with us today on the Garage Gardeners Radio Show. I'm a 14-year-old garden writer and speaker, and I love growing tomatoes, and I love doing the radio show, and I wish that the garden season would never end.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephen Biggs, and thanks for hanging out with us today. Emma and I think gardening is a great way to hang out together, and we're glad you're hanging out with us here. Our show is all about extending the gardening season and pushing garden boundaries.
And we have some amazing guests lined up for you today. Our first guest is Ciara Byrne, who's going to be joining us from Green Our Planet in Nevada. She's going to tell us about her inspiring work with school gardens. And when we emailed her a couple days back, Ciara said that they have over 700 fifth graders selling fruit and veg from school gardens at the next student farmers market. Our second guest is Hilary Dahl from Seattle Urban Farm Company, who's going to be telling us about some pretty inspiring rooftop gardens.
And today in Emma's Tomato Talk segment, you'll hear her chat with Colette Murphy from Urban Harvest Seeds in Toronto about tomatoes with stories. And today in Bigs on Figs, well, there is no Bigs on Figs because I got busy and I forgot. So I owe you one segment for next time. If you'd like to connect with us, you'll find me at stephenbiggs.ca and Emma at emmabiggs.ca.
And I just redid my website, and so there's lots of pictures and new things, and I want to get back into blogging, so you can please check it out at, again, that's emmabiggs.ca. On Instagram, you can check out us as the radio show at Garage Gardeners, and if you're tomato crazy like me, be sure to check out my Instagram page as emmabiggs_grows.
We love to meet our listeners in person. Check out stephenbiggs.ca for upcoming talks. And on 8th of February, we are in Niagara at the Niagara City Saturday. We're going to Texas for February 15-16, the Mother Earth News Fair. And we are really stoked about that. Emma's doing 3 talks there. And lastly, the 29th of February, Brampton City Saturday here in Southern Ontario. Okay, and Emma, you're doing some seeds this year. Tell us quickly about that.
Yeah, I was hoping to sell some seeds this year for some neat varieties that I've been growing. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you follow me on Instagram, emmabiggs_grows, and you can find updates on my website at emmabiggs.ca.
Okay. Oh, and high five today, Emma. This is episode 24. That
Woohoo!
means we've got 2 years under our belt here in the studio. All right. Let's get straight to our first guest, Ciara Byrne, who's on the line from Nevada. And if you tuned in to our October 2019 episode, I was joined in the studio by food policy expert Wayne Roberts. And on the drive to the studio, we had lots of time to chat, and Wayne suggested I connect with Ciara. Now, Ciara's a documentary filmmaker by training, and in 2013 found herself working on a project in Niagara. And somebody had recently got her thinking about using filmmaking as a conservation fundraising tool. And that was the seed of the idea for a crowdfunding platform for green projects, a nonprofit called Green Our Planet. And when they got successfully funded, a school garden project was one of the first things they did, and Ciara saw the opportunity to help many more schools. So that led to Nevada's first STEM garden curriculum for schools: STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And Green Our Planet is now growing gardens and entrepreneurs well beyond Nevada.
Now, Ciara's work was recently honored by the Obama Foundation, and I really recommend that you visit their website, greenourplanet.com. Ciara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Emma. Nice to be here. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Well, we're so excited to have you here to tell us about what you're doing. And tell us a little bit more about how Green Our Planet got going and how you got to the point where you are today.
Okay, well, in 2013, as you mentioned, we started a green crowdfunding platform, and we used our filmmaking skills to shoot little short films of students in schools talking about why they wanted a school garden and why a school garden is important for them. And then their parents and local community members donated to their various campaigns, and there was enough money raised, and so we started building gardens for them. So we built our first school garden in March 2013, and last week, Martin Luther King Day, so last Monday, we built our 185th school garden. We're working with over 130,000 students in Nevada, and we're also doing our hydroponics program, which is indoor farming in 50 schools. And yeah, so that's where we are.
Wow, that's incredible. And then you're over 130,000 students. What is the age range?
Oh, that's a great question. So 140 of our schools are pre-K through 5, so mostly elementary schools, but we are also working with middle schoolers and high schoolers. Our focus in middle and high school is special needs students. We have a curriculum for them that trains them in jobs connected to gardening. In pre-K through 5, every student at the school is engaged, and each grade level has different lessons that connect to a job. So, for example, you mentioned the farmers market. So grade 5 has 2 units in their curriculum. One unit is called Food Justice, where they learn about food deserts and pesticides and so on and so forth. And then the second unit is they're trained by bankers, the 5th graders, to become entrepreneurs and to turn their garden into a business. And then they then sell the fruits and the veggies and products they make using herbs from their garden to their local community. And then we have giant farmers markets twice a year where all the students come together, and they're a real blast.
Wow. So can you describe those giant farmers markets for us a bit? You talked about it when we spoke before, and I was so excited.
Oh my gosh, I have to tell you, those days are my favorite days of the year, and I'm so excited that this year it's on April 22nd, because that, as you know, is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So I know that in 190 countries around the world, people are going to be celebrating Earth Day, and here in Las Vegas, we'll have about 700 5th graders and special needs students from middle and high schools, and they're all going to come together in downtown Summerlin, which is a mall in Las Vegas, and they're all going to be selling the fruits and veggies from their school gardens, and they also always make super creative crafts using veggies from their garden. They make pictures using vegetables. They make soaps using herbs from their gardens. They also sell things like loofahs. We grow loofahs in our garden. They're growing stevia, all kinds of interesting things.
Wow. And I just want to make sure our listeners got that number, over 700 students who are doing this.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah, we haven't found anybody to contradict the fact that we think it's the largest student-run farmers market in the United States.
Wow. And what kind of people come out to shop there? What does it look like?
So we have, obviously it's a mall, so we have the, shoppers who come out, but also we have a lot of parents, all the gardens have sponsors, who pay for the program, and we have a lot of sponsors who come out, and then we have other students coming out. So it's a really big mix of people.
Now, I wanted to jump back. You'd mentioned that for those grade 5 students, in addition to food justice, they're being trained by bankers, and they're getting this financial training too. Can we dig into that a little bit? Tell us more about that.
So the way the financial literacy program works is each fifth grade class is partnered with a banker, and the bankers are assigned by our financial literacy manager. And we work with bankers from Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Charles Schwab, Bank of Nevada, Nevada State Bank, and so on. 21 different financial institutions and about 130 bankers. They each get a class, and they do 2 workshops with the fifth graders. The first workshop they will be doing around the middle to end of March. And in that workshop, they're going to talk to the fifth graders about, what is the role of the banks in the community? What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? And then looking at their garden as a potential business. So what do they want for their garden? Do they want to buy more apple trees? I heard Emma talking about tomatoes. Maybe they want to buy some tomato starts. What are the things they want to buy that will, improve their garden, grow their garden? How much are all those things going to cost? Maybe they want to buy hummingbird feeders. Maybe they want to buy benches, and then they need to figure out what that costs and then see if they can sell enough food from their garden to cover those costs. So that's essentially the first workshop. And the students then get 2 weeks to actually write the business plan. Then the bankers return for a second workshop. And in the second workshop, they focus on things like developing negotiating skills. And those are really fun exercises because students pretend to be buyers and sellers. And a buyer might say, well, why should I buy your radishes when the ones two booths down are 50 cents cheaper? And so the seller has to come up with some really, innovative ways. Well, I'll throw in a pepper, with my radishes or whatever it is. So they're learning negotiating skills, they're learning customer service, they're learning how to change money, and so on and so forth. So that's their second workshop. And then the third time the bankers work with the students is actually at the market. So they're their official coach. They have a banker coach at the market, and the banker's just making sure that they, implement all the things they've learned in the workshops. So it's a lot of fun.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And so these students are learning not only about gardening, but about skills that they can use for the rest of their life. That's pretty cool.
Exactly. We hope that we're going to grow entrepreneurs all across Nevada and beyond.
Yeah. So they're growing all of these products. Do they have the farmers market? Is there any other times when they sell their produce? You mentioned soap and loofahs. Do they sell those to parents at other times and do things like that as well to make money?
That's a great question, Emma. So yeah, they do. For example, last year we had about 200 farmers markets at schools run by the fifth graders. And that's really when the bulk of their selling and their products, happen, which is actually at their own schools. The big giant farmers markets are only twice a year. And while they're a lot of fun and they can make a lot of money, they have a lot of our schools have quite big gardens, anywhere from 20 to 60 to 70 beds. And so they have a lot of food. I mean, they're selling all throughout the year. Like one school, for example, J.T. McWilliams, they have a farmers market cart, which is this kind of cute wooden cart with a farmer's market written on it. And they wheel that out every Friday, the fifth graders do, and they're selling every Friday to their parents as the parents are dropping students off, at school. So, and many schools do that. So they're doing weekly or monthly farmers markets, depending on how big their gardens are.
Wow. Now, in one of the pictures that you shared with me, I saw students wearing a button that says, "I am a farmpreneur."
Yeah, that's what we call them, farmpreneurs. That's the fifth grade curriculum is called the farmpreneur program.
Okay.
So when they officially go through the workshops with the bankers and when they go to the giant farmers market, they get an official I am a farmpreneur badge. And that basically says that they've gone through those workshops and that they know how to write a business plan and that they've actually gone through the process of selling their products to the market.
Okay. Are the students also involved in planning the garden during the year?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the way the program works here in Nevada is we have 8 horticulturists. We call them farmers here at Greener Planet, and they're awesome. Super green thumb, green every finger people, just like you and your dad. And they essentially manage 20 schools each, and they go to those 20 schools every week, so roughly 3 or 4 schools a day, and they teach classes at those schools. They're science/gardening classes, and they're basically training the students and the teachers how to manage their garden and ensure the gardens are successful. They also bring the seeds, seedlings, things like that.
What are you hearing from parents and from schools who are getting feedback from parents?
Well, we don't have anybody who doesn't love their garden. I haven't been to a class at an elementary school where I haven't seen the students super engaged and excited. Who doesn't love to be outside? Do you want to be learning about photosynthesis out of a book, or would you rather be outside, watching plants and charting their growth and all that kind of thing? So students, teachers, parents, everybody loves the garden. It's just fun. And making school fun is critical, right, as we want to engage students in their learning. And what we have found, so we're obviously doing a variety of data collection, but one of the interesting things that has come up at quite a number of our schools is we have schools that track attendance, and they realize that the gardens is an incentive for students to come to school. And so the days when they notice, like, for example, one of our schools, Helen Hare, students often miss school on Mondays and Fridays, so they started planning all their garden classes on Mondays and Fridays to get the students to go to school. And likewise, at J.T. McWilliams, another school, they give incentives around the garden to encourage students to have a whole month of not missing school. So they get to go to the garden for extra time and things like that. So that's kind of exciting to see that students love the garden so much that it's encouraging them to go to school.
Yes. I'm interested to know about students who have gone through the farmpreneur program, and if you've heard any stories about them doing interesting things afterwards or changing their aspirations for what they'll do as they get bigger.
That's a great question. And you know what, we really should try. We haven't tracked that, to be quite honest with you. But it's something that we absolutely should track, because a lot of our students go then into middle and high schools where we also have gardens, so it wouldn't be too difficult to actually track. What we have tracked somewhat are special needs students, because their curriculum is around learning jobs connected to gardening, so pruning trees, landscaping, running compost systems, and so on. And some of the special needs students we work with have gotten jobs in nurseries here in town, and that's kind of cool.
Wow, that's great. So we have listeners all over North America, and I bet a lot of them are wishing right now that they were in Nevada. What
That's funny.
People who are outside of Nevada who are keen on what you're doing, how can they connect with you, and what kind of programs of yours could be of interest?
So we have expanded. So one of the things, I know Emma mentioned the Obama Foundation, and one of the things, the goals of the Obama Foundation, being an Obama Fellow, is to actually expand our program across the United States and beyond. So right now we're running our hydroponics program in St. Louis, Missouri, Florida, New York. We just got an email today with a video from a tribe living 19 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and they just received all their hydroponic systems today, and they were opening them, and all the students were super excited. So we're running our hydroponics program across the country because we just mail the hydro systems directly to the schools. And there's basically a hydroponic system for every grade level, K through 5. We have a curriculum and lessons that match basically the system and the engineering components of the system. Grade 5 also includes the farmpreneur program, but this time it's working with a hydroponic system instead of the outdoor garden. And then we provide training online for teachers. So that program is very easy to deliver anywhere in the world. We're also working in Kenya right now, in Ireland, and helping schools get that program in those two countries as well. So anybody can apply for that program. We raise most of the money to implement it, to buy the systems. Schools put a little bit of money towards it, but we're getting grants from national foundations to help with that.
Wow. Okay, and just to repeat back then, so there's different hydroponic systems teaching opportunities all the way from K through 5 then, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. It's basically a comprehensive STEM curriculum, and it's to the next generation science standards. I'm not sure if you use those in Canada, but I'm sure you've probably heard of them in the United States. There are science standards that are used in over 35 states, and they're basically hands-on learning. So they encourage, learning through experiments, learning through hands-on.
Okay.
So they're the standards, and so those systems are basically, we mail them to the school, and then the school uses them, to teach with the lessons and so on, and then we train the teachers how to teach the lessons. And if they're interested, anybody can reach out to our hydroponics manager, and that's Chris, CHRIS, at greenourplanet.org.
Okay, Chris at greenourplanet.org. Okay.
Yeah, and she's our hydroponics manager. So my job is to raise the funding so that schools can reach out to us, and we can provide the programming and most of the systems at a super, super low cost. So we have, lots of different funders who contribute to pay for them.
Okay.
I was wondering about cross-curriculum. Do you often find maybe art classes going outside and drawing the plants or garden plans? Or I know the science classes must go outside, but do you often find other classes using the garden as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the teachers use the gardens for everything from art to writing to reading. We have some schools have yoga in the garden, meditation in the garden. There's, as because you're garden lovers, there's nothing you can't do in the garden and you can't do better, right? If you're drawing in the class, well, isn't it just way more fun to be drawing butterflies or whatever out in the garden? If you're reading in the classroom, well, isn't it just more fun being on, the sunlight and feeling the wind on your cheeks under a tree out in the garden? So our teachers do use it for cross-curricular lessons for sure. I mean, the focus of the curriculum is science, technology, engineering, and math, but the teachers, we hear stories of them like cooking in the garden, so it can be used in many different ways.
Okay. Wow. Well, we're getting to the time where we need to finish up, Ciara, but a big congratulations from both of us on the Obama Foundation grant. That's just wonderful news, and your work is so truly inspiring.
And I'm wishing that I lived in Nevada right now.
So are you going to come visit us and do one of your book signings in Nevada?
I hope so. That'd be amazing.
Well, yeah, we should talk about that.
Okay, we'll have to put that on the to-do list.
Yeah, we'd love that. Okay. Ciara, thanks very much. And for listeners, we'll put up some beautiful pictures that Ciara's shared with us about that amazing farmers market and more information about Green Our World. Thanks, Ciara.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 That was Ciara Byrne from Green Our Planet. You can find the organization, at greenourplanet.org, and Dad is going to post those pictures when he gets them on his website, stephenbiggs.ca.
Okay. Well, wow, that was inspiring, wasn't it, Emma?
I kind of want to move there now.
Yeah. Well, we had a nice note from Dan in the Ottawa Valley who got in touch to say, I really enjoy your podcasts and look forward to it. So thank you, Dan. We always appreciate the feedback. And please connect with us, emmabiggs.ca or stephenbiggs.ca or Instagram. Garage Gardeners is the handle. And Emma, your most recent Harrowsmith blog, Harrowsmith Magazine, you talked about a tomato called White Wonder. Let's take a minute just to talk a little bit about White Wonder.
Yeah, well, White Wonder was a tomato variety that I got from my good friend Linda Crego, who lives in the Niagara area, and she has grown hundreds of varieties of tomatoes, and she has an amazing plant sale in the spring, which I just love. And so I went there and I picked up a plant for a variety called White Wonder, and it's this medium to large sized cream or ivory colored tomato, and there's normally maybe 3 or 4 ribbing sections on it, and it's a bit of a flan shape. The flavor is nice and sweet and mild, and it blew me away with its production. It was just, I was hauling in these tomatoes every day. And so it's definitely a really neat variety to try. And you can read the blog post on the Harrowsmith website. You can go to the Harrowsmith Kids blog.
And that's Harrowsmith Mag, Harrowsmith.com, Harrowsmith Mag. Well, as I said, I don't have a Bigs on Figs segment today because I got busy, and I'm sorry. But I do want you all to know that the next fig book is in the works. And I had years' worth of fig questions that people had sent me. Really interesting, really great questions, people growing in many different ways. And so this next fig book is going to be all fig questions and answers, because I always thought the best way to learn is by hearing other people's questions. So stay tuned, and if that interests you, my newsletter at stephenbiggs.ca will have information on that. And we mentioned our upcoming talks. If you're in Texas, we would so love to meet you in person when we're there for the Mother Earth News Fair. And Emma, you're also speaking at Canada Blooms on March 21st,
yeah,
right?
I can't wait.
So
it's going to be fun.
That's going to be the big stage at Canada Blooms, March 21st, and that'll be the talk Gardening with Emma, which, although it's based on the kids' gardening book, Gardening with Emma, it's inspiring for adults too, and you've had some great feedback on that.
Well, I think that the talk has evolved over the last few years, because it started with stuff from the book and stuff I was doing, but in the past year I've done so much that it has lots of other ideas too, and not only kids' activities, but lots that adults will want to do in their gardens.
And then we've had people at the talks who've given us ideas too. Like, remember that boy Finn who was so excited about the dragon tongue beans and theme gardens that he decided to do a dragon themed garden?
Yeah, I find talks is not only me or Dad giving people information, but we come home with our pockets filled with it too.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is the part of the show, Emma, where you take over.
Yeah, this is the Tomato Talk segment, and today you're going to hear a chat that I had with Colette Murphy from Urban Harvest Seeds, and they're a local seed company that grows their own seed of pretty amazing variety and sells it, and you can find them at uharvest.ca. Here's my chat with Colette. Welcome to the show, Colette.
Thank you, Emma. I'm a big fan, so I'm excited to talk to you.
Today I wanted to ask you about some neat tomato varieties with a story, and it's always my favorite when we go and I end up seeing you at different CD Saturday and Seed Swap events, because you always have the best stories to tell about a whole bunch of different tomato varieties, and I was wondering if today you could tell me about a few of them.
Sure. Well, one of my all-time favorite tomatoes is Black Krim. I am a big fan of the black tomatoes, I have to say. And Black Krim I've been growing for a very, very long time. And one of the things that I really liked about it is that, we sell plants as well as seeds. And years ago, we used to sell them to a store that doesn't exist anymore, but Grassroots on Bloor Street. And they had their plants out front on their rack. And I think it was probably the following year I did a little plant fair in Grange Park by the AGO. Okay. And a woman came up and she said that she was walking along Bloor Street the previous year and she saw these plants in front of Grassroots, and she didn't really care about organic. She said, in fact, organic, schmorganic, who cares? But I saw this plant and the name intrigued me, Black Krim, and she said, I just decided to buy it. And I grew it. And she said, when I ate that tomato, I couldn't believe what I'd been missing all my life. I cried, she said. I felt sorry for everyone who wasn't eating them. And she said, I'm a total convert.
Wow.
Yeah. But, it's a really lovely, big, black, great flavor, and even reasonably productive. I mean, production always, having high production in your tomatoes, some are just not prone to it, but others, as long as you have really, really good soil and lots of nutrient in it, they will produce more than they would if they're, grown in poor soil, for sure. So it can be a productive one as well. And I find it doesn't crack much for me at all, even though it's really big. And it just has that great smoky flavor. So that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a really nice story, and that's kind of the way I feel every day when I get to go out into my garden and pick tomatoes and fresh fruits and veggies, and I wonder, how can people live without all these delicious things every day?
Oh, I know. I think that we had a fire last year, and so our fields were were much reduced just because I know it was moving and living out of an Airbnb for a long time. So I didn't plant nearly as many tomatoes, and I so missed it. And we're almost finished our sauce from the year before because I tried to do lots of sauce with them after I cleaned the seeds. And so I really, I'm so looking forward to this year. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Can you tell us about another awesome variety?
Sure. Well, another one that I always tell people that if I could only grow one tomato, if I was so limited that I could only grow one, it would be black plum. And have you grown black plum?
I did. You gave me the seeds last year and I grew it and it was amazing. And I think you told me the story and I wasn't 100% sure that it was this one, but I think I know what you're about to talk about.
Well, it's, I don't know where it originated, to be honest. And the thing I like about it most is that it's super, super, super productive. It's just like, it's hard to keep up with them. And I make sauce out of all the tomatoes. So when we clean the seed out, I don't like to waste the tomatoes. So we make sauce out of, I clean the seed out, and then I make lots and lots of sauce. And the black plum makes a fabulous sauce. And there is a chef in town. Used to have a few restaurants in town, Jamie Kennedy. And he used to buy lots of tomato seeds from me for his farm. In fact, he brought almost every one year. And I asked him, after growing all of those varieties, if he only had to choose one, what would it be? And he said, black plum, hands down. I roast it. I cut it in half and roast it with, olive oil and salt, just a little, super simply. But honestly, they're like candy when they come out of the oven, and I always overeat them.
I have to say I do the same. I just ate dinner, but you're making me hungry all over again.
Yeah, so that's another one of my favorites. And I hate to stick with the blacks, but I have one more black one that I really love. It's Paul Robeson. I don't know if you've grown that one.
Yes, another amazing tomato.
Really amazing. And Paul Robeson, as you probably know, was an opera singer, an American opera singer, but he performed a lot in Russia, and he was very, very, very popular there. So this tomato was developed in Russia and named after him. And I love the flavor. It's not quite as big as a black Krim. So it's not a medium. It's a larger than a medium, but it's a really good size and just fabulous, fabulous flavor. And I have a friend who I introduced another one of my tomatoes to him years ago. He's Ukrainian, and so I gave him a plant for the Cosmonaut Volkov. And that's all he grew every year. And he would grow lots of them, and he would give them away to his neighbors and everything. And then one year, maybe 4 years ago, he said he wanted to try something different. He felt like he was being a bit stuck in the mud by only growing Cosmonaut Volkov because it's so very productive. So he grew the Paul Robeson. Being Ukrainian and liking things Russian, and he said to me afterwards, he said, that is the best tomato I have ever had in my whole life.
Wow.
So I loved that. He still grows Cosmonaut Volkov though, but I've expanded his horizons a little bit.
Yeah, that really is a great tomato. And what I've always wondered is why they named a tomato after an opera singer. I couldn't quite figure that out.
I think he was just so popular there. He traveled a lot and performed a lot in Russia, and so whoever developed this just obviously was a fan and named it after him.
Well, it sure is one worth growing.
It is, absolutely. They're probably all worth growing, aren't they? It's hard to find one that I don't like. When people say, what's your favorite? I went, oh my goodness, that's such a difficult question. Mm-hmm. But another one of my favorites, and it's actually on our business card now for years, is the Costoludo Genovese.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Have you grown? Yeah, you've grown that one?
Yeah, I have. Beautiful, delicious, productive.
Yeah, super productive, especially for a good-sized tomato. Very, very productive. And I didn't know it, and I didn't know of it until maybe 12 years ago, maybe even a little bit more. And I was doing a Canada Bloom show, and there was a man working for Humber Nurseries there, but he was a real tomato. I think he just worked for the shows. He didn't actually work for the business. And he kept sending people over to my booth to buy tomatoes, which was really sweet of him. But he said, have you tried this one? And I said, no. And he said, well, you have to. And so we've been growing it ever since then. It just became one of my real favorites because it's so pretty too with its fluted shape, and so tasty and so productive. And I like a big tomato that can be really productive as well. Especially for urban gardeners, I feel like sometimes if they choose some that are really, really fabulous but are only going to produce a few, like Mortgage Lifter never produces more than a few per plant for me, even though it's a fabulous tomato. I like to turn them onto ones that are going to be really satisfying in their production.
Thank you so much for talking with us, Colette. Before we finish up, I wanted to ask where people can find you with your seeds, where they can go if they want to find out more about Urban Harvest.
Well, they can always go to our website. That's U for Urban, uharvest.ca. We'll be at lots of Seedy Saturdays coming up in February and March, and we're also going to be at Canada Blooms for 10 days in March. And then we're not sure about our pop-up shop yet this year. It's going to have to move, unfortunately, but we will post it on our website as soon as we know our new location.
Okay, thank you so much for chatting with us, Colette.
Thank you so much.
That was my chat with Colette Murphy from Urban Harvest Seeds. You can find Colette and lots of cool seeds at uharvest.ca. Again, that's U like the letter, harvest.ca, and it's seed exchange season. So here in Ontario, the seed exchange, or here in Canada, I think, is called Seedy Saturday. And so you can all, if you live in Canada, go there and you may find Colette.
Yeah. By the way, if any listeners thought that they heard a ticking sound in Emma's tomato segment, that's my fault, because I set up my grandmother's antique clock in my office to make me think of her, and I was just noticing the ticking, so we'll fix that for future
And it drives
segments.
me crazy, so now I have a reason to make him get rid of it.
All right, our next guest today is Hilary Dahl from the Seattle Urban Farm Company, and Hilary's passion is dear to our hearts because she creates landscapes that are beautiful and productive. Seattle Urban Farm Company combines creative ecological landscape design with sustainable growing, and they create edible urban landscapes.
And Hilary shares another interest with us too, broadcasting. She hosts a fantastic podcast about edible gardening called Encyclopedia Botanica. And in fact, I was lucky enough to be on it, and you can listen to that at seattleurbanfarmco.com. Now, welcome to the show, Hilary.
Hi, thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, it's great to be here and talk to you again. I loved the episode we did together on Encyclopedia Botanica.
That was so much fun.
A lot of comments on that one. People really enjoy it.
Yeah, I love doing that, and I always love talking about tomatoes.
Good.
Yeah.
Me too, and clearly. I was just listening to part of your previous segment, and it's getting me excited for summer.
Yeah.
Well, Hilary, I know that you have a background in landscape architecture and urban planning, and so can you tell us how you got into what you're doing at Seattle Urban Farm Company?
Yeah, to be completely honest, it was sort of by chance, actually. I knew, so when I was in school studying urban planning and landscape architecture, for some reason, I had this idea that the work that I eventually did would incorporate edible or food into an urban environment. So food into whatever designs that I ended up doing. It was very obtuse at the time, but I was just really into incorporating food and farming into the city. So every design I did had some sort of food growing element. And then I randomly met the founders of Seattle Urban Farm Company, Colin and Brad. Actually reached out to them and was able to meet with them, and then I started working with them right away. And that was 10 years ago now, almost like to the day. So I've just been doing that ever since because I love it. And, we're a small business, and the three of us have been running the business for so long that there's a lot of freedom. We get to kind of follow our passion. So, for example, I had this, got this wild hair that I wanted to do a podcast, an educational podcast, and so I just did it. And it, we have this great community of gardeners that support that, and Yeah, so it's been kind of a dynamic evolution. Seattle Urban Farm Company, like I said, well, it started 12 years ago. So before I was part of the business, and there's been many iterations of the business. We've grown to be really big, and then we've actually scaled back, and we've done really huge landscape designs and really huge installations. And now we're starting to scale back and focus more on edible garden maintenance, which we've always done, but we're really shifting our focus to that because there's a big need for that as our city changes and kind of urbanizes. And so I think that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, I wanted to first ask if you could explain a little bit more about what Seattle Urban Farm Company does to our listeners.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, so traditionally what we do is our kind of elevator pitch is we design, build, and maintain edible gardens, and particularly edible gardens that are beautiful. We found that people associate vegetable gardens with something that isn't very pretty, and they usually put them kind of out of sight. And when a vegetable garden's out of sight, it's out of mind, and it isn't often that pretty. But we want to encourage people to bring those gardens to the forefront and really incorporate them into their lives and how they live. And so we design, build, and maintain edible gardens. But as I said, we're sort of the design build part is sort of falling away, and we're really focusing on doing a lot of garden maintenance. And so what that looks like is we work with clients. We work with about, it fluctuates, but it's usually around 70, 75 clients every year. And we our growing season in the Pacific Northwest starts pretty much end of February, early March, and it goes through November. We work through November. Really, you can't grow anything past October. But anyways, we work March through November, and we do everything. We come and we decide, how the garden's going to be laid out that year, how the crop rotation is going to work, and then our maintenance team comes, visits gardens on a weekly or biweekly basis, and like I said, pretty much does everything to grow and succession plant and care for these gardens. So
Wow, and I think that's really great because we have a front yard garden, and I think that front gardens can look pretty incredible, even if they have edibles in them. And I think if more people knew that, then more people would try growing edibles. So I think what you're doing is pretty great.
Yeah, and we do it in such a way. We've been in this kind of niche business for so long that we've really had the opportunity to perfect our system. And so we're able to lay out gardens and succession plant and do things in such a way that the garden does look really tidy and organized and just really attractive year round. And we incorporate flowers and basically for us it's all about keeping things really organized. And so it ends up being, even if it's a really simple space, even if it doesn't have fancy trellises or any fancy kind of hardscaping elements, we can still make it a really beautiful place just by using the annual plant material in a way that it's tidy but also dynamic. I always say, I start out every season with these like super tidy gardens, but by midsummer, no matter what you do, no matter how tidy you are, things are going to kind of go crazy and turn into a jungle, and that's what you want because they're going to be, fruiting and producing, but so I think for us it's all about just getting people to keep it simple and know that, starting with a simple, tidy garden is you're going to end up with something wild and beautiful, but really productive and, relatively disease-free and easy to maintain. So,
Okay. Well, why don't we talk about some of the rooftop gardens that you've done? Because you sent me some pictures that just completely inspired me about some of the rooftop projects that you've tackled. and one of which was the Amazon campus. Can you tell our listeners about that? Because that's amazing.
Yeah, so this is a group of clients, like the Rooftop clients are sort of a new burgeoning group of clientele that we started working with maybe, I want to say we had our first Rooftop client. Well, we really had our first Rooftop client in 2009, but that was our only one for a while. And then Seattle started building all of these new apartment buildings. Mm-hmm. And so folks would, well, let me step back. The reason why it was rooftop gardening wasn't a huge thing in the Seattle area until 2013 or so is because in order to build a garden on top of a roof, the roof has to be engineered for it. Mm-hmm. So a square foot of saturated potting soil, and that's a light soil, weighs about don't go see an engineer, everybody, don't quote me on this, but I want to say it weighs about 40 to 50 pounds per square foot of when it's saturated with water. So that adds up very quickly to be a lot of weight. So a rooftop needs to be engineered to maintain a safe rooftop garden. So anyways, as Seattle started growing more and more buildings were being developed, people were thinking along these lines and creating spaces or creating buildings that could support rooftop gardens. And so, so we've grown from one to now we have over a dozen rooftop gardens, and they vary in size from about 350 square feet to about 1,700 square feet. So some of them are actually pretty expansive, pretty large. The Amazon one in particular is a really cool, unique project. It's there's a campus in South Lake Union, which is a neighborhood in Seattle, which houses Amazon. You might have heard of it, the company. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of buildings. And so what they're starting to do is put rooftop gardens on their buildings. And we work with them. We just consult with them. It's a huge corporation they already have a full landscape team and, people that are already doing like the installation work. So we just consult with them and tell them what to put on the roof, and then they'll put it, they'll build the garden, mm-hmm. and then we come and maintain it. And so on the 3 current sites at Amazon, we have just around 350 square feet of gardening space, so it's really not that much. But on that site, on those 3 sites this past year, we grew over 1,300, I want to say, pounds of produce throughout the season. Wow. So we farm it pretty intensely. And that program is unique because what Amazon has done is they've partnered with a local nonprofit mm-hmm. called Fair Start. And Fair Start provides culinary job training to youth and adults, apprenticeships. They provide free community meals. They're pretty expansive nonprofit, and they support a lot of programs in Seattle to kind of help soften the economic disparity and changes that are starting to come up in Seattle. So they're a really cool company, and Amazon works with them to, they donate all the food that we grow on the rooftop to their restaurants.
Okay.
So we work with the chefs, the head chefs at the restaurants, or the people who run the programs, and they tell us what they want to grow, or just kind of general ideas of what they want to grow, and then we kind of help guide them because there's certain things when you're growing for production, that you can get a lot, you can grow a lot of in a small space. Mm-hmm. And we're not on these rooftops. I say we grow 1,300 pounds in a 350 square foot space, but we're not growing zucchini, or we grow a few beds of carrots, but it's pretty much all salad greens.
Okay.
So we're up there just succession planting all season long, and working with the team to grow as many salad greens and some root vegetables, and then what else was there growing up there? I think some peppers, like a bunch of shishito peppers and things like that. But focusing on a sort of smaller list of crops, but producing a lot of them so that the restaurants can actually supplement what they buy. So the nonprofit can supplement what they buy with what we're growing up there. So that's kind of a fun, different model. That's the only model that we really have like that, where a corporation is actually supporting, they hire us to come in and do this work, and then they're donating everything to
that not-for-profit.
So
Okay.
It's pretty fun, and it's a way for community members and Amazon to interact. And there's a bunch of volunteers. There's a group of volunteers on Amazon that we've actually trained, and they come and harvest with us. Because harvest days, you're in the middle of the summer in the sun, it's hot, and you have to work fast. And so, it's been a really interesting program, and our maintenance gardeners love it because they get to work with people and, train new people and teach people how to grow food. Whereas when they're working in residential clients or in a lot of our other projects, it's, you're pretty much just farming by yourself, and that's lovely too. But it's a little different. So
very different, yeah.
It's been really fun.
Can you tell us what your approach to designing your rooftop garden is? How it may be different from an in-ground garden?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a lot of ways in which a rooftop garden would be different. First of all, on rooftops, we pretty much always, the biggest consideration is weight, and it always comes down to weight. So we always have to, have an engineer come and tell us what the threshold is or how much weight the roof can support, and then that's just sort of step one. It's super important, and I just like to emphasize it because I talk about rooftop gardening a lot, but I just really don't want anyone to go out and put a garden on the roof because it could be bad. But yeah, so number one is just weight. Whereas if you're on the ground, it doesn't matter. And then, we always use potting soil because, again, weight. But two, weight. It drains better, and it's lighter weight because it has things like perlite in it and peat, and just helps keep it light. When you're working in a rooftop situation, some of the things that come up for us are wind. So we don't, depending on the space, some of our rooftops, we won't do any trellising crops. Or if we do, we keep them really low. So, we wouldn't, in many rooftop gardens, we wouldn't grow, 6-foot tomato plants because it's just too much of a liability with the wind. Alternatively, we have rooftops. We have a couple of rooftops that have really tall trellises. I actually just posted a photo of one, but they're built into the site. So they're actually built. They're part of the beds. So we're not just putting tomato cages up there. It's like a solid structure. But wind is a really big factor. Birds are huge. Birds are a really big factor when you're thinking about a rooftop garden. Oftentimes, we will, unless we know there's some, crazy bird population in the area, oftentimes we'll just design a garden as we would on the ground. We make sure there's enough sun, which is never an issue on a rooftop. Make sure there's a water source and we have good drainage. And then if there is a bird issue, we'll just put bird netting down or tie, what are they called? There's this tape that you can tie, bird tape, that's what it's called. But birds are a big issue for rooftops. And what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah, and then heat can be a really big issue. We actually have, in some of our gardens, we actually have frames. Some of the gardens that get just blasted full sun all day long, we actually have frames that look like cold frames built onto the beds. And we have these little shade cloth pieces that we can attach to them so that if we're growing greens or something in the heat of the summer, they don't get scalded. Not a huge issue in Seattle, but if you were building a rooftop garden in a climate that's a little bit warmer, you would definitely want to consider that. So it's pretty much the same considerations that you would keep in mind when building on the ground. You just have to be really conscious of the weight. And a water source too, not all rooftops have water.
Yeah, I was actually wondering more about the watering, because up on rooftops it can get really hot. So do you have irrigation systems set up, or do you have people up there watering? And also, do you tend to have containers, or do you tend to have larger beds made up, more like raised beds?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, I guess back to the containers, because that's probably what you were getting at with the last question. We tend to have containers or wood-framed raised beds on a roof. And by containers, I don't mean small containers. The smallest container we would probably have on a roof, or I would recommend for a roof, would be like 30 inches by 30 inches or so. Because, yes, at one point we tried to grow tomatoes in like 5-gallon containers, and even that they would dry out. There was just too much surface area. So when I'm thinking about a rooftop garden, as much as possible, I want to limit the surface area of whatever container I'm planting in. Like, I want to limit that surface area. So the larger the bed, the better, if that makes sense. And depth isn't, we have rooftops where there is, well, honestly, we have one, and I'll talk about that in a minute, where it's, between 6 and 8 inches depth, but that's a tricky one. I would not recommend that. But average depth would be 12 to 24 inches of soil. And, the deeper the soil, the easier it's going to be to retain moisture. But you don't need that much. 12 inches of soil on a rooftop is just fine. But, yeah, we tend to work kind of blank slate situation, where we'll come in and either build just traditional raised beds, lift it up off the ground, off the roof a little bit, so that you have some nice you have room for drainage. So you don't necessarily want your beds like right on the roof, but lift it up a little bit. But you could build like a 4 by 8 foot raised bed, build a bottom, and then lift it up on a couple 2x4s or something, and you would be good. Or we use a lot of fiberglass, like 4x4 or 3x3 containers. Those tend to be really good too. We've also used, like if someone was looking for a really inexpensive, effective way to set up a garden, on Bastille, we used baby pools, and I actually made these, like, I found this UV, it was actually old billboard material. Billboards are made of plastic. I don't know if anybody knew this. So it's like UV proof plastic stuff, and it looks like there's like a mesh in it. Anyways, I sewed like little skirts for them, because if you've ever seen a baby pool like left out in the sun, it just starts to disintegrate.
Yes.
But I sewed like these liners for them. So I lined the baby pools in this UV proof material, and then we filled them with soil, punched holes in it for drainage, filled them with soil. And some of those have been on Bastille for 10 years, and they've been totally fine. And it's very inexpensive. So, and those are about a foot deep. But
that's a really practical.
But anyway, so you can use a variety of materials to, on a roof. You can get pretty creative, just like you can on the ground. But again, like the less surface area, like in my experience, the fewer smaller containers you have, the better. And by small, I mean like a 5-gallon container or so, because they just have all that surface area, just absorbs the sun. And I feel like dries out the plants and stresses them out. Like the tomatoes that we were growing in the 5-gallon containers were all having potassium issues. And I think it's because they just couldn't absorb the water fast enough, and then they would become, they were deficient.
Right.
So the one outlier I was saying, where we have this bed that was like it has 6 to 8 inch, or this garden that has 6 to 8 inch beds, that is actually a garden that was built as a green roof. So it was built for like succulents. And so it's flush with the ground. It's really interesting. It looks like it looks more like a farm or something. It's flush with this huge roof deck, but the beds are really shallow. So we can only grow certain things up there. It's super productive. We grow crops for a restaurant, and in the 8-inch beds we're really successful with shoshitos and eggplant and shiso, and then clearly, lots of salad greens and stuff. But in the shallower beds, we can pretty much only get away with like salad greens, radishes, things like that. But that's another unique space. We only have one garden like that that was designed for a more traditional green roof, which people tend to use succulents and things that are drought tolerant, that don't have really deep root systems.
Yeah, and then you've just repurposed that for edibles.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's
I'm
inspiring.
sorry.
Well, Hilary, we're getting to the time where we need to finish up. But before we do...
so much. I didn't even talk about irrigation, but I'll just say really quickly that we use drip irrigation 100% everywhere. I don't think we wouldn't be able to maintain all of our gardens, especially rooftop gardens, without the drip irrigation. And we run it often for short intervals throughout the day.
Okay, so drip irrigation for the rooftops. And before we let you go, though, we got to tell listeners about the podcast. Tell people where to tune in and how to get it.
Okay, yeah. So actually, the podcast is sort of on hold right now. I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the 2020 season. I'm going to do something. I'm just not sure what it is. But there's 3 seasons. There's 108 episodes of the Encyclopedia Botanica podcast. It is on any of your, Stitcher, iTunes, any of your favorite podcast players, or at SeattleUrbanFarmCo.com. They're all there, and if you go to the website, then you also get the show notes and photos and things like that accompany each episode. But yeah, there's more information on rooftop gardens and all sorts of gardens and just how we think about planting and things like that there. So do check it out.
Okay. Hilary, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate that.
It was so nice to talk to you guys.
Thank you so much.
I wish I could talk to you longer, but it's a real pleasure, and I hope you all have a really great spring.
Thank you, you too. Well, let's do this again.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That was Hilary Dahl from the Seattle Urban Farm Company. You can find her at SeattleUrbanFarmCo.com. And Dad will also post some pics from Hilary onto his website, stephenbiggs.ca, when he loads up the podcast.
Yeah, and they're inspiring. Well, the Garage Gardeners show is just about over for today, and a big thanks to Ciara Byrne and Hilary Dahl for joining us on the show. If you have ideas for future guests, people who push the boundaries, who do cool stuff in the garden, please send us your ideas through stephenbiggs.ca. We love sharing good news stories. Or connect with us on Instagram, where we hang out as Garage Gardeners. You're listening to the Garage Gardeners radio show. I'm Stephen Biggs.
And I'm Emma Biggs. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to the Garage Gardeners radio show with your hosts, Stephen and Emma Biggs, right here on Reality Radio 101.